So I've noticed that many people have enjoyed me sharing my RWBY videos for the past few weeks. I thought I'd try to keep this going by covering another topic related to the series. Now, there are many topics I have planned for the future, but one jumped out to me recently. That topic is about arguably the biggest fan project from the series, fixing RWBY. I know some aren't fans of fan projects, but I think they have a place in every fandom. I mean, at one time, I wrote a whole season for a sequel to Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Speaking of, I really need to revisit that series. It's been a while. Anyway, my point is that it's fun to see fans take something and add their own spin to it. It's why I wanted to become a writer when I started writing fanfics, and I still write them today. In terms of fan projects, Fixing RWBY, created by Celtic Phoenix, was one of the most ambitious. He decided to rewrite the whole series from the beginning and fix many of the complaints that fans have made for years. He also did this while keeping certain parts the same, like Pyrrha's death and the girl's separation during Volume 4. Since I am a fan, I just saw the trailer for the rewrite for Volume 7, I decided to take a look back on the series and point out the best examples of Fixie RWBY being better than the original. Also, I should point out that I will be going over spoilers for his series, so this is just a heads up for that moving forward. Let's start with my first complaint about RWBY, which is the prejudice against the faunus. As most people remember, Blake is the faunus who revealed she was once a member of the White Fang, a terrorist group that fights for the rights of faunus. Her whole point in joining was that she claimed that the faunus were unfairly treated and didn't deserve that. But there's nothing wrong with having a character based on fighting prejudice. RT dropped the ball on this part of the story. I get it, it's not easy to talk about. However, that's the point. We don't talk about it because it's easy, we talk about it because it's wrong, and pretending it doesn't exist in some form doesn't help. The issue here is that for all the times Blake complains about how the faunus are treated, we rarely see that happening. Even other YouTubers have covered this topic in the past.
I mean, just look at Sun. The kid walks around with his tail out, loud and proud, and nobody gives him any shit. He eats where he wants, he hangs where he wants, and has no fear of breaking the law. We're introduced to the character in Volume 1 and the shipman yells, "You no good stowaway." I think it would have been better if he yelled, "You no good faunus." Now that would be just one random racist, but the fact that he felt comfortable enough to scream that out loud, that would have set the table for faunus discrimination better than anything Blake or Weiss said.
Unlike Rooster Teeth, Fixing RWBY adds more focus to the discrimination of the faunus, and it becomes a significant plot point in the early volumes.
Baffled, Weiss puts a hand to her collar. "People like me?" And Blake throws her hands in the air. "You're discriminatory!" Without missing a beat, Weiss shouts back, "I'm a victim!" Narrowing her eyes at Blake and whispering roughly, Weiss says, "You want to know why I despise the White Fang? Why I don't particularly trust the faunus? They've been at war with my family for years."
Adding Weiss's racist attitude towards the faunus and giving her reasoning is an excellent example of character writing. Yes, it's not something you can defend, but it's something you understand. It is also nice to see Weiss overcome her hatred for the faunus later on. I know some have complained about a few things, like Weiss defending Cardin, but overall, Celtic Phoenix did a great job incorporating one of the plot points RT dropped the ball on. Speaking of Cardin, that leads to my next point. Fixing RWBY makes use of all their characters. The original series has a habit of introducing characters who become irrelevant later on. Cardin, Team Coffee, Tucson, I could go on. I'm not saying every character must have a deep backstory, but you can at least add more depth to them when they're introduced. Look at Tucson, for example. In the original series, he only appeared in the premiere of Volume 2 and was killed off. All we know is that he's a former member of the White Fang who defected and ran a bookstore. The problem is, it's hard to care about his death considering we know next to nothing about him. I think the intent was only to make it seem like Blake was in danger, but it's never brought up that Blake knew him, and we never see Mercury and Emerald hunting down other defectors of the White Fang. Thankfully, Celtic Phoenix found a way to add more depth to Tucson, while also adding to Blake as a character.
Blake arrives at a shop called Tucson's Book Trade, and inside she's warmly greeted by the owner, a tall puma faunus named Tucson. We learn quickly, through implications in their dialogue, that the two know each other from a shared history in the White Fang.
Having Blake know Tucson, while also telling us he helps others lead the White Fang, makes viewers care about him as a character. I know I preach about show don't tell, but there are circumstances where that's okay, such as this. When making a story, you have to pick and choose what deserves more focus, and showing Tucson and Blake's relationship in a flashback doesn't add any more to the story than just telling us how Blake knows Tucson. It also makes us care when he dies because we got to know him and he was likable. I know, showing more of a character gets us invested in him. Crazy concept, right? My final point is the power scaling. The biggest problem with this series, in my opinion, is the power scaling, which is an essential part of any action series. Power scaling allows characters to gauge their strength, while also showing the strength of the threat they're fighting. It's why we saw Byoka take out Ichigo after his fight with Renji. It sent the message that for as strong as Ichigo is, he still had a long way to go before he was ready to fight him. The issue is that RWBY isn't consistent with their power scaling. Sometimes characters have trouble fighting one person. Other times, just one of them can take down a whole army of Grimm. The biggest example I always bring up is the finale of Volume 2, when Coco mows down multiple Grimm on her own. I would be fine with this if it was Crow or Glenda doing this, but this was Coco, who's only a year ahead of RWBY and her friends. It's really hard to be concerned over these monsters that the series has built up as only wanting to take out every living person, when someone who's a sophomore in high school can mow down so many of them simultaneously. There is someone who argued because Coco has a chain gun, that's why, but even the series doesn't stick to that reasoning considering Nora has a grenade launcher, which we saw her using during her fight with the Deathstalker in Volume 1. Don't you think that would be enough to blow one up, if a chain gun could take so many of them out in one go? Or shouldn't every soldier in the Atlas Army have one, considering how easy it is to take out Grimm, and how easy it is for a second-year student to get their hands on? Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Let's get back to what this video was about. Here's how Celtic Phoenix handled that scene, which I keep complaining about.
Coco in this scene isn't super overpowered as her bullets don't mow through throngs of enemies in no time flat. Instead, it's serving the purpose of an actual automatic weapon, suppressing fire that keep the White Fang and Grimm at bay.
This isn't the only example of showing this either. Later on, when he gets to Volume 6, instead of having Blake and Yang magically turn strong enough to take on Adam, the whole team fights him and struggles to defeat him. It still sends the message that Team RWBY still hasn't reached their peak, which is obvious considering they would have been in their second year of school if Beacon hadn't fallen. I'm not saying characters can't be strong. I'm saying that part of their character growth should be about them growing stronger while not being inconsistent with their scaling. If characters had trouble beating someone, you have to show how they got stronger to beat them, or change the fight like how Fixing RWBY had all of Team RWBY fighting Adam instead. There was something else I wanted to talk about, but it involves too many spoilers, so I'd rather you see it for yourself if you're interested in checking it out. I will say that one of the changes they made was a unique take I wasn't expecting. Either way, I highly recommend you check it out for yourself. Again, fan-made projects are a part of every fandom, and the series comes from fans who love the original series, which also got me somewhat back into the RWBY fandom. Either way, I'm excited to see what happens when the rewrite of Volume 7 goes up.